Anita, tuna tinggi sampai madria, nangi 집에서 주가를 쉬어야 영역 그걸 사요래 계속 쉬어래 한 다가라 이지게 돈을 시험에 하고 싶네 그래서 좀 시행들이 이지게 나야 수초 시신 쉬어야지 Here we are yet again just to let to all of you and now that election is nearing. In the past many weeks, we covered many important topics every Saturday, and then at the same time we reached out to the younger generation of Tibetans in North America, Europe, Australasia, India, and Nepal. And then we also had parallelly another program every Tuesday and Thursday on the zones that we have distributed, Nepal and India. The last session will be coming Tuesday to do with the Tibetan settlements in central India, Manpad, Bandra, and Orissa. So today we'll speak about what I have learned through these years. What were my experiences in my public service. With that information, it will give you an idea as to who Pema Tsering is and what he has done and how he has done and how he might do in the future. Therefore, I start from my birth. Of course, just like many of my generation, we don't know our actual day of our birth, many of us. So that includes me. But I know that I was born on a Saturday because my parents had named me Pema Tsering. And I also know for a fact that I was born in the horse year, so that should have been something like 1966, late 1966 or early 1967. But when my younger brother registered my name in the registration certificate issued by the government of India, at that time he had mentioned 1963, and all my other documents, the identity certificate and others reflect the same date. So therefore, today officially, both years 1963, but that doesn't matter. This is just to give you an idea of my age. I was born in a small farming family. Many of us were poor at that time. As we all know, our parents left Tibet. They left behind all their valuables and just managed to escape into India. So we were farmers. And in all my younger years, I remember we were always engaged in farming or some other activity that rotates around that. You know, the dairy and looking after cattle and studying, of course. So all those were part of our growing up. And we have worked very, very hard on the field. Therefore, I have a fair knowledge of what agriculture means, including organic farming and including usage of renewable energy at this age. So during my school days, even when I was in grade 3rd, 4th, I used to lead the prayers in school, and later I became a school prefect for 3.5 years, almost 3.5 years, since my grade 9th. And then I managed to top the merit list of the 1985 batch of class 12 from all the Tibetan schools in India. Therefore, I managed to get admission into Madras Christian College, where I studied economics. So even when we were very young, I remember I used to sit around my parents and listen to their stories, particularly when His Holiness visits. Many of our parents' friends come and stay. So unlike what we Tibetans normally do, when elders talk and if the kids are nearby, then we say, okay, this is elders' talk. Kids doesn't need to be near us, so we tend to push them away. But that was not the case with my father. And he always inspired me to join the Tibetan government in exile and to serve His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So he was my first inspiration. He always used to say that whenever you finish your school, college, you should go and serve. So that has remained etched in my life. And then there were representatives, very young representatives of His Holiness in the settlements who used to inspire us. Then we have very, very inspiring teachers who guided us through our school. And during college also, of course, the scholarship from the Central Tibetan Schools Administration was not enough to sustain all by itself. So I got a little more support from the Education Department from the second year, and little support from Amavega, the German aid to Tibetans. But despite that, I started working in a restaurant in the evenings for almost 1.5 years during those 3 years to support myself. So I can proudly say that during my whole college days, I never had to depend on my family. Of course, they had none to offer. We were too many kids. I was third among 9 children. And I'm proud to say that I supported myself during the college days, college years. And when we were in second year, the demonstrations, peaceful protests by Tibetans in Lhasa started. That is why you have today an organization called the Guchusun. That was 1987, September, 87, October, and 88, March. So these are 3 months after which the Guchusun is named after a former political prisoners association. And then members of parliament came, the South Zone coordinator was Tanda Singla, they came to Madras, and then after a very, very long time, we organized peaceful demonstrations in Chennai. It's not that easy because we have no Tibetan settlements in the whole of Tamil Nadu. There was only Kadar Mashi and his family and some of his family members there in Pondicherry. Therefore, we asked for the leadership of Kadar Mashi because he heads the Tibetan Freedom Movement in Pondicherry, and that's how we formed the Tibetan Freedom Movement of Tamil Nadu in Pondicherry. So while Rinpoche was the president, I was the secretary of that association, and then we organized many demonstrations in Madras. While we were doing that, we became very friendly with the police commissioner who later became the Director General of Tamil Nadu Police, and he helped us a lot. So Rinpoche and myself and my college mates, there were only 5 of us in Madras Christian College at that time, and the Tibetan Sweater Service in the area. So that's how we got started, and then we asked more members who were doing business during winter in Tamil Nadu to come join us during the protest demonstrations. And after we finished with the protests, then these people also started asking us to help them with their places of marketing. Some are having problems with authorities, whether it's with municipalities or police. So we got a letter from the Director General of Police, and we met with all the superintendents of police where the Tibetans were selling sweaters. We made it do away with the token amount that you have to pay and create better relations with the local authorities. We had the aim to somehow standardize and make it hassle-free issue for the soil sellers in Tamil Nadu. But then we finished our college, and during the college days also, I was the secretary of the Nigerian Tibet Friendship Association. So even during those days, we were very active in college. One of the reasons why we decided to go to Chennai was not to get involved into politics while studying. And that's why we didn't go to Chandigarh or other places where there were more Tibetans. But somehow events caught us in this, and that was very helpful to learn some leadership skills of organizing events at that age. Then, after I finished my graduation in economics from Rajkishan College, I spent about 5-6 years to look after my family. Then in 1994, I was elected to the Central Executive Committee of Dome as the General Secretary. So that was a big leap for me, coming out of college, just spending a few years looking after my family to go join an organization at the central level. But of course, it doesn't allow me to stay in Dharamsala, so I have the freedom to operate from Pondicherry. When I first started, it was a little difficult because most of my colleagues were from the elder generation, and I had a different view, and they had a different view. Things like, when we took over, we had already approached Nechung for Oracle, and the Oracle had prophesied that the Tibetans from all the 3 regions of Tibet should offer long life prayer to His Holiness. And my colleagues were, I was telling them, okay, this is something we requested, but it's meant for all of us, so why don't we approach the other Shogas to do it together? Then my elderly colleagues told me that no, this cannot be done because we sought this oracle. And when it comes to collecting money, they would say, oh, you're coming to us. I said that should not be the right way of doing things. It's our job to approach them. If they don't join, that's their problem. But if we don't approach them, then we lack leadership. So that's how it went through for several years. I had a good time with the elders. We tried to change their mind in terms of course, you have your affinity for your Shoga. You like to claim that you are the best, you are the largest, whatever. But when it comes to national unity, I always say that we have to come together. We have to come together. There's no other way. Then I was elected to the 12th Parliament in 1996 when I was 30 years old. At that time, of course, I didn't know much about Tibet, not much about politics, much less about how Dharamsala functions. But due to my 2 years in the Central Executive Committee of Dome, I had a fair understanding of how the Parliament works. We already had a network, things like that. And the one thing that I focused on when I joined the Parliament, which I would even advise the upcoming members of Parliament to do the same, is to focus on my core competency. I studied economics. I had a fair enough knowledge of accounts. So I focused on the budget of the government. And I found that the Central Tibetan Administration budgetary policy, the process was not being totally accountable to the Parliament. Therefore, in the first budget discussion itself, I made quite a cryptic statement that the CTA's budget process is like a child's play. That is because we have a certain amount of money to be sanctioned by the Treasury of the government, that is from the Finance Department, which is controlled by the Parliament. But we have a larger amount of money that is owned by the departments. So, and that is not sanctioned by the Parliament. The recurring expenses that we sanction from the treasury, and if it's not enough, then it's being spent from the capital of the departments. So there was no accountability or no sanction of budget in a sense. And my intention was to change that. So due to my background, the speaker, deputy speaker, they always appointed me in the budget estimate committee, wherein I always studied the earmark fund, which are not controlled by the parliament, and then kept making remarks on this to bring some change. And a committee was also formed on that. We tried our best, we came out with our recommendations to the House, and the things evolved to such a level that even the cabinet members said that if you bring in this change, we won't be able to work and you will resign, and so it became quite dramatic in the parliament. But at the same time, members got confused because many members don't have good enough knowledge of budget and accounts and all that. So they were ripped apart from what the Kashak was saying on the one hand and what the committee was saying on the other hand. So we could not move anywhere beyond that during the first 5 years of my service in the parliament. Then I have this thinking that, of course, Professor Rinpoche, when he was the speaker, he used to say that not even needle and threads expense can be made without Parliament's approval. So to make that happen, Rinpoche always used to be very, very attentive when I speak on the budget issue. And then when Rinpoche became the first Kangyur Chiba elected by the people in 2001, Bongam Junenla and I were given the privilege from the member, from the parliament side, with the consent of the speakers, to take part in this new committee that Rinpoche formed called the Budget Presentation Review Committee. Now in that, during the whole process, I played my part in contributing as much as possible to make budget accountable to the parliament. And from that time till now, we follow the same procedure with minor changes here and there. So that was my first 5 years, my main achievement, what I tried to. But then for a member of parliament, it is always very, very important for you to keep up to date on information, because information is key to anything you do. So you have to know a lot of things apart from your own core competency as to what, if you're good in accounts, okay, you focus on budget, accounts. When you stand up and speak on budget, everybody has to listen to you because you speak sense on budget. So similarly, if you're good in foreign relations, or if you're good in situation inside Tibet, or if you're good in education or health issues or settlement rehabilitation programs, then you should focus on those and then bring out your best in the parliament. That's how the dignity of the parliament increases when you speak about real issues with real information. That was my first experience. Then in 2001 I got elected again, and for 4 months I stayed in standing committee. And during that period I asked the parliament staff to upload all the charter and the amendments over the last 10 years, from 91 to 2001, and computerize that. So for that I had to read the charter and all other regulations, and then I also brought out issues including spelling mistakes in the charter, and distributed among Tibetan experts as to what is the right thing. So got all these views and made about 65 pages of amendment, and it was ripped apart in the standing committee. Yes, that was okay. But we did, that was my first stage of regulations. The whole detail of all this, going into the details of all this. Then eventually, of course, when I became speaker, I had to oversee the whole process of amendment to the Charter when His Holiness devolved his administrative and political responsibilities. And because of that, again, we had to change many of the provisions in the individual rules and regulations, some 24, 25 rules and regulations that we have. So my knowledge in terms of democracy, rule of law, the intricate details in the rules and regulations that governs us, I can fairly say that I have, we had to go through a lot. Every evening I had to go through, 3-4 times before it's being presented to the budget, to the parliament. So, quite detailed information about what the rules are. Then, after 4 months, I joined Tibetan Parliamentary and Policy Research Center in Delhi, about October, November 2001. And then we decided to focus on areas. I read through all the minutes of the Governing Council. Professor Rinpoche, Samdang Rinpoche was the chairman for many years because of his responsibility as the Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in exile. So since Tibetan Parliamentary Policy Research Center is an offshoot or is a project of the Tibetan Parliament, Rinpoche was the chair, and then you have the Frederick Naumann Foundation, the German Liberal Party's foundations, people in there, our members from different departments. So that was, for me, an eye-opener. When I joined TBPRC, I read all these governing board minutes, and then we decided, okay, we will focus on issues. So what are the focus that we need to address, issues that we need to address? So first one was the responsibility of reaching out to Indian parliamentarians, rested on Tibetan Parliamentary and Policy Research Center. Therefore, even though there had been a lot of support from Indian politicians, members of parliament from the 60s, by the time I joined TBPRC in Delhi, it was a little bit on a low note, so we decided to rejuvenate all-party Indian parliamentary. So we had representation of different political parties and quite a number of parliamentarians in this group. We thought that was important group to have, starting from India, and that went on for many years. Then we decided to focus on the issue of autonomy. Even before I joined TBPRC in Delhi, my predecessors have organized conferences on autonomy and autonomous regions and autonomous arrangements, those kind of things. And then we decided to follow through with more such meetings, inviting academicians, inviting politicians from central governments and autonomous regions from different parts of the world at conferences in Delhi, and then also invite our members of parliament and our staffers from the civil servant to understand what all this means, because then it gives you a broader idea of what are the autonomous arrangements that are prevailing in and around the world, in different parts of the world, and what are those kind of, what are the features of those arrangements. So we undertook that. We also formed a group called International Convention of Autonomous Regions for Tibet, ICAT. So that was a very, very enriching experience to understand how we should proceed with middle way approach, because the middle way approach is a concept. Now, under that concept, we have to develop ways and means to reach the objective that we have set. So you learn from different experiences, because no two autonomous arrangements are same around the world. You cannot get a photocopy of one autonomous region to another autonomous. All are different depending on the state of negotiation, the power of the center and the state when the negotiation took place. So when we talk about degree of autonomy, it could be varied, very, very varied. It's not on the same scale everywhere. Then this, even when I went to different settlements to conduct other workshops, I make it a point to explain, go to each and every camp and explain what autonomous arrangements are there around the world with a world map and all that. So that was a very good exercise for our members to understand what autonomy means. We are not just talking about 5-point peace plan or Strasbourg proposal, or at that time we didn't have the memorandum, but it gives us a very good insight as to how autonomous arrangements have reached between different countries, states, and how people are appreciating or not appreciating all of that. So that was one thing. Then the other area that we decided to focus was, since this is TPPRC is associated with the Tibetan Parliament in Exile, it's our responsibility to promote democracy. Now at the central level you have the Supreme Justice Commission as the judiciary, you have the parliament as the legislative, and Bashak as the executive, and everything. We were in good hands. Professor Samdharan was already gone at Chiba. The parliament was doing well. The Supreme Justice Commission didn't have too many cases, but all the elements and organs of democracy were functioning well. So we decided that okay, local assemblies were formed at different levels, at different settlements. Now, many of them do not seem to understand what their role and responsibility is. And during our time, earlier when we were younger, and during our previous generation's times also, how meetings are conducted. So some system had to be brought into all these meetings. Therefore, we decided a series of programs. I myself devised a 6-day workshop for the local assemblies, practical workshop, 6 days. So we did that in Digiling for all the settlements in and around Uttarakhand. We did one in Bir, Gazo, Anshen, Terke, and all the surrounding members from the surrounding local assemblies. So similarly, we did in Ladakh, we did in Bandara, we did in Bangla, we did in Nepal, in Pokhara, and Kathmandu, and also in Tizu. So, Tizu, Meo, I think, yeah, Meo. So we did all these programs in different places, and then, made the local assembly members understand what their role and responsibility is. Made them understand about rules that governs, while conducting such sessions. So that turned out to be very useful. We spent a lot of time also on that. That was one area of grassroots democracy, promoting grassroots democracy over the years. Then one area we focused was on youth. So we developed this program, 2 programs in a year, one for grade 11 students who doesn't have to go through board exam, and then one for university students. The maximum number at that time it would take was about 60, 70 students. So there were about 16 higher secondary schools in India and Nepal. So if a Tibetan goes through all Tibetan schooling, then any student who passes out of grade 12 has to go through these 12 schools. So we got representation, we contacted through the education department, we contacted all the schools, and then we had equal representation of boys and girls. And we conducted every year 9 days workshop. Some 35 prominent people in Dharamsala, including the Supreme Justice Commissioner, the Speaker, the Kalan Shiva, and everybody used to come and talk to them about their work. And not only that, all of these students in different batches were taken to each and every department, every office, a cultural institution, the non-governmental organizations in and around Dharamsala to understand the whole democratic setup. and what our big family is all about, and the financial situation and all that. So that is very enlightening for very many children, which we continue, which we plan to continue into the future. As Professor Raviche used to say, this is our best investment. So that was one area that we, and I'm very proud to say that many of the students who had gone through our workshop are right now serving at Dharamsala. That is one area. Then, for me, it was so these were main areas: promoting grassroots democracy, creating awareness on autonomy, the middle way approach, under middle way approach, and then focusing on youth. Then one area was that the German Foundation, the Frederick Naumann Foundation, was very involved with the International Tibet Support Groups Conference. So the first, I believe, was held sometime in late 1980s in Dharamsala, and the second one was in Bonn and Berlin, the second and third. And the fourth, I believe, was in Czech Republic. So that was in 2003 when I first participated in that as a part of the organizers, including Reverend Banerjee from the Naumann Foundation, and then Sunam Thakur, Thakur Nubla, and Sandala, and all of this. So that gave me a very good exposure of the international Tibet support group communities around the world and people who were involved in those work. Then 1 year later, we were, at that time, the speaker was Abdul Jumela, the present speaker. So he entrusted me with the responsibility to organize the World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet, which is another big platform. So these two big platforms. One is the International Tibet Support Group Conference, the other is the World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet. The first one was held in '94 in Delhi, then '95 in Lithuania, '97 in Washington, D.C. And since then, the World Parliamentarians Convention on Tibet has not been held. So the speaker gave me the responsibility, and then I took over the responsibility of organizing this. We had to change the venue from Italy to Scotland. Kesan Taklala was the representative there at that time. She facilitated that decision. And I stayed in Scotland and in Edinburgh and London for more than a month to organize that. So personally was very involved in doing all this along with our friends in Scotland, supporters in Scotland, and the International Campaign for Tibet, who joined us for the first time to organize such a meeting. And that was followed by that was the fourth World Parliamentarians Convention. When I became speaker, then we organized the fifth World Parliamentarians Convention in Rome, and the sixth one in Ottawa in 2012, in Rome in 2009. So I have a very intimate relation with the World Tibet Support Movement. The International Tibet Support Group Conference, I think the fifth one was in Belgium or something, then Suraj Kund. So all of these I've been involved, and I'm connected in many ways to these conventions. That was one area. Then, by the way, when we were in Delhi, the Delhi High Court decided to destroy all the buildings on both sides of the Yamuna based on a complaint filed by the Wazirpur Bartan Nirmata Sangh. Later, the court took it upon themselves to turn Yamuna potable, saying P-O-T-A-B-L-E, that is drinkable. That was the dream of that judge, and he appointed a special committee to look into that, and then a lot of joggeries on both sides of the Yamuna were destroyed. The only places that, few of the places that remained were Samyaling, Majnugatila, Budvihara, Majnugatila, that Gurdwara, and one Muslim building towards the Noida side. So because of that, for almost 2 years, we had to meet. I was not alone. I never say that things are done because of one person. It's always a collective responsibility and a teamwork. So at that time, we were 5 members of parliament. Acharya Rishipindo was working with us. Chidu Chuyong Ongshu was also there in the Tibet Coordination Office. Yudho Ogasang was working in Delhi, and Doji Devasang. We were 5 members of parliament, and since I was the senior person, I used to lead all that. So we went and met many leaders, political leaders, including Sonia Gandhi ji, because it was Congress government at that time. That we met with Home Minister Shivraj Patel, we met with Urban Development Minister Jayapal Reddy, we met with Delhi Chief Minister many times, assisted by the local MLA, Prahlad Singh Sani. So, and we also met a number of legal luminaries to represent us, to help us, to give advice, things like that. But we always left it to the Majmua people, telling them, okay, it's up to you to, when it comes to take a decision. It's our job as representative people to make contact with the right people. So every time there's a court hearing, a date set. I went to Delhi High Court for many times. So right now it's under the deep freezer because the judge got transferred to another state, and the committee also fell through. So nobody is raising that again. But still we need to be very careful because it's a very sensitive area. It's on the bank of Yamuna. And it's a place where every Tibetan come and go, not just Tibetan, many other communities also come and go through that settlement. So it's important for us to be mindful of the laws that govern us there. And this is one area that we worked. And then, of course, I got re-elected in 2006. And when 2006, every one of you know that we had 2 speakers. After 4 rounds, Kamashimala, and we got the same amount of vote every time, and then it was decided that we'll share 2.5 years of 2 parts of the 14th Parliament. And I served the second half in 2009. Then there was the 2008 widespread demonstrations in the whole of Tibet, touching Tibetan people from different backgrounds. So that was a huge eye-opener for the Chinese government and for the Tibetan people and for us in exile to understand what is really going on inside Tibet. And I was part of the crisis group formed by the parliament and the cabinet together. And we organized a lot of programs and events around that time. When I got elected to the, when I took the responsibility of the speakership on 16 December 2009, then we decided that there has to be a better way of maintaining accountability of the elected members to their electorates. Since we are elected from different provinces and different religious traditions, and then from Europe and North America, from geographic constituents, we have to be responsible for the 6 million Tibetans, not just to the people who vote for us. And there was no way that to make the elected representatives accountable and answerable and responsible towards that public, other than dividing zones of all the Tibetan communities in India and Nepal, and then assign 2 or 3 members to these zones for 2.5 years instead of 1 visit, which used to happen earlier. So, under the hope that these members will be responsible for, political education, sustainability of the communities, and the education system, poverty alleviation, and one more. So 5 issues we gave them the responsibility. And it's not enough to just go once, irrespective of whether there are people who vote for you or not. So you go once and then you go back, and next time people still ask you what happened to our request earlier. So we thought that that would be more accountable. And even before we did that, even before I became Speaker of the Parliament in 2005, again with the consent of the Speaker, Mr. Prem Chungnia, we, for the first time, we took a delegation of Tibetan members of Parliament to Europe, to Belgium, to Italy, to the UK. The idea behind that was that we are too consumed by Dharamsala politics. Our politicians think that Dharamsala is the sky, Dharamsala is the world. That's not enough. So we thought that it would be good to have more exposure, to learn from other nations how they function, So, and at the same time, to also advocate for Tibet. It was important for the Tibetan Parliament to maintain relation with other parliamentarians around the world. So we, 11 of us, including myself, we got funds from ICT, we got funds from the South Tyrol government and Tibetan community in UK. So because of all of their help, we managed to take our members to the European, to see how the European Parliament functions, the Council functions, the Commission functions. We went to South Tyrol to understand what South Tyrol autonomy is all about. Because His Holiness had said several times that if Tibet gets an autonomous status like South Tyrol, he would be happy. So that was one example that we needed to study, and the other example was Scotland. So we went to Westminster in London to understand how Westminster views the devolution of power to Scottish people. And then we went to Edinburgh to understand how the Scottish people understand the special status relationship with the UK government. So those were very educated, very powerful experiences that makes you do more. And after I became Speaker, we increased that, and even now the members, it has become a regular feature for the members to visit different countries and make relations with, advocate for the Tibetan cause with other parliamentarians. During my second term, we built the Parliament building. I was personally, I'm so interested in these things that I personally got involved into the committee to build that in designing and, laying the blueprint for those. So, in these 7.5 years that I was Speaker, the biggest responsibility happened when His Holiness decided to devolve his political and administrative responsibilities. So I got elected. This whole process had to be finished before the 15th Parliament came into their post, take their oath of office. So we had to work day and night to make that happen. To put all things together, to make sure that everybody can agree to this. I remember when His Holiness took Losang Singla and myself, at that time Losang Singla had not taken oath of office, but he was Sejong Khalön Chiba elect at that time, and we went to meet with Speaker Joan Banner in the House, along with the former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and 5 other heads of committees. And on this side was His Holiness and Losang Singla, myself, General Rinpoche, and some of us. So His Holiness told me that if they ask questions about democracy, you answer. So one lady asked this question as to, how did you manage to get this through so fast and so peacefully? So I was about to respond to the chair lady, telling her that for you it might seem very fast and very smooth and all that, but for me as the Speaker of Parliament and for my colleagues as members of Parliament, we were sandwiched between, on the one hand, the aspiration of the Tibetan people, and on the other hand, the strong determination of His Holiness Dalai Lama. So His Holiness held my hand and stopped me from speaking and said, sometimes very stubborn Dalai Lama. So that was a very, very huge responsibility, and we managed to do that. Um, so by the time I became speaker, the parliament was already broadcasting the proceedings live through the cable television in Dharamsala. So later we changed that to worldwide, anybody who was interested to watch the parliament. So the whole parliament proceeding became digital and transparent. So nobody can say I said this or not. You can see it on the screen as to who is saying what and who's standing for what when they vote. So this I thought was a big step forward in making our process more transparent. And even before that, during my second term, since 2001, some of our friends, we always used to see how we can help other members. In my case, those who are weak in mathematics, those who are weak in budgetary issues, I help them to understand what this means when you look at this number, where you should look for other numbers, those kind of things. And for those who are weak in Tibetan, then we invite people who are good in Tibetan to explain to them. Because those days we used to have very, very informative and decisive Kashak statements in written. So those had to be understood before you take part in such debates. So these were largely how we worked. And as Speaker of the Parliament, I made sure that all the rules are followed. I'm in the middle of all this, not siding with the Cabinet or the Parliament if there's an issue, or not siding with either side of the Parliament if there's an issue, unless it comes a time for me to take a decision. So I've been fair to everybody. Within the Standing Committee, we don't have much time to argue on small things. We were busy. We even had this program called, we divided members into 3-4 groups, a group of 3-4 members to go out to different states in India, reach out to the governors, reach out to the chief ministers, reach out to local leaders. So all these ones. And then we also had programs to reach out to embassies. Yeah, so it was quite a hectic time, and during 2 terms, the first term, 2.5 years, it was with Gary Ramana, and the second 5-full-year term was with Kembo Sunamdemela. So we had a very, very positive, contributing effort in getting everybody together. So if somebody would try to blame me for not being able to work with others, it's not true. In the Standing Committee, we have representatives from all the provinces and from all the religious traditions, and we work together very well. Now, because of all this, then of course, for a little more than 1 year, I was posted there in Washington, D.C. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from our friends. And then whatever I learned, I try to teach others, make them part of the whole development process. Now these are, so as I said earlier also, because of my, when I was a speaker, I had the opportunity to visit many countries in North America and in Europe, except for a few countries in Europe. I visited almost all the countries, in South Africa, in Australia, Taiwan. So these exposures, visiting these countries, reaching out to these leaders, and meeting with the Tibetan communities in all these areas give me a very good understanding of where our community stands today. And these are all these experiences, all these learnings today give me the confidence that I can do this job, because I know this job. All my time I keep thinking about Tibet. How to, what are the issues? How do we get over these issues? So I'm always in these things, and this is one thing that I thought I can best do it. So that is also the reason why I stood for elections. Now it's up to you. to decide who you should vote. And of course, it's very important that you listen to everybody. Today, on the backdrop, you can see this change. I've changed the backdrop to this format where you have to vote. When you vote, you have to write the name. In my case, it's Pemba-Sireng. Then you have to write the native region, Nangara Amdo, the Dome, Nangara, or Nala Dome, and then the place of residence. I still live in Balakopi, and my former designation was, my highest position was former speaker. So we use this, so it's makes simple. It's not for the benefit of my people who vote for me, people who think that I will do something, people who have this belief that Pemba-Sireng can contribute something. This is an example for everybody to understand on the voting day, how much ever you make noises you make today. So on the day when you go and vote, if you don't write each of these details correctly, then there is every chance that your vote may not be counted. So all this effort goes to waste. So make sure that whoever you're voting, you fill these details, whether it's for member of parliament or whether it's for SIGAM. So this is a reminder to everybody that this is what you need to know before you go and vote. Then what else? I know many of you are quite familiar with my thinking as to why during this pandemic period, why I'm not going out and speak to the public, because if you go out, you have to meet with the public. And the situation of COVID-19 is not getting better, it's getting worse. So till the whole world is vaccinated, we are not going to be free that much more. So I'm more concerned about the health of the public and the life of the public. Therefore, I speak from my home. And this is also digital age, so we do that. And now that we are almost through the preliminaries, only about a week left before the elections, if we get across the line of preliminaries, then we will be focusing on doing things that are very progressive. My vow has always been not to say anything good or bad about other candidates. I believe that the whole election process need not be based on personality. It should rather be based on issues. So we'll be organizing a lot more issue-oriented discussions, which need not be belonging to one particular group. Anybody can participate in this. People who support or don't support one particular candidate, or people who come from different regions, or people who come with different political ideologies. We will focus on those areas which are common to every one of us. Let's leave the differences aside for a moment. And then let's focus on the common areas that every single Tibetan can work together. That will be our focus. That will be the next phase of our election, where we will focus on doing constructive things, the exercises that will help the community on the larger level, and for the future. That is the direction that I want to take this whole process. So tomorrow we will have one session with Tibetan women, chaired by Lusula from UK. So that will set as an example of our next phase of discussions. I will elaborate a little more of this on 31st of January, December, a few days from now, as to how we intend to go about this. And I would really wish the general population to take part in these discussions. So I've mentioned the teaser. Let's see when the actual event happens. whether we have a real participatory democracy or not. And this will hopefully set very, very good example for future elections to come as to how candidates can direct, lead the way in making the community less divisive and make it more unified. So I hope through my today's presentation you got a little understanding of what I went through. Of course, challenges are always there. Nobody can deny that. But you cannot remain cowed down by challenges. You have to face it as long as you are truthful to yourself and you are truthful to others. There's nothing that one needs to worry about. And the thinking has to be for the betterment of the cause, for the betterment of the institution, for the betterment of the issues, for the Tibetan people, not for self-benefit. Then we can be very, very sure of success. So more details will come through. I'll see you tomorrow evening for the women's issues. Mostly I want to listen to the issues and what women think could be possible solutions. Thank you so much and see you tomorrow.